Welcome to PureEsperanza's In the Art of Living series. PureEsperanza is a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing forth consciousness while educating body, mind, and soul in the art of well-being. Tonight's topic is breaking free, and we are so excited because we have a very esteemed guest, dear friend, and we're just deeply honored and thankful for joining us tonight, our co-host, Daniel Mangena, who is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, public speaker, named the Wall Street Journal's 2020 Masters of Success. And on top of that, and I'm sure he can have a whole list for you about his background, but he is also a board member for PureEsperanza. So we are just so thankful for your presence, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you for the chance to hang out and to talk about freedom. Really excited for the opportunity. And Ethan also is excited to be a featured speaker this evening and may join with a few words of new human wisdom for us too.
Absolutely. Yes. So we're going to dive into tonight's topic, breaking free, which, for everyone here and for every human being, it's really something that resonates deeply within us at some level, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, intellectual, soulful, spiritual, it resonates with us somehow. And there are parts of our own self, aspects of our own being that are wanting to be free. And that's part of this life experience. And so we get to do that in a number of different ways through our experiences and the consciousness that we bring to those experiences. So then it stands to reason that this idea of freedom is going to be very individualized and customized for each and every one of us. And I think about this time that we're in where we have so much information, we're inundated with information, we have access to tons of information. And then it becomes the question of like, well, what does this mean for me? How will this look like for me? Because until it gets integrated into our own being, we really can't sustain it. And so that's a certain amount of focus and energy and consciousness that we commit to and that we bring to our experience that allows us to have a deeper integration of what it means to be free. So I'd like to be able to turn this over to Daniel and start out with the question, what is freedom? And please feel free to use that chat box and ask questions, and we will have some Q&A at the end. Daniel.
Well, again, Esperanza, muchas gracias. It's an absolute pleasure to be welcomed into what you and Stephen and the rest of the gang have been creating. The idea of consciousness and the expansion of consciousness is something that I spoke about as being part of my creed, my ethos in my book, The Dreamer's Manifesto. I believe that each of us has a contribution towards the overall expansion of humanity through the expansion that we have within ourselves. And part and parcel of that is really looped around the idea of freedom, as I would have everybody accept the invitation to see freedom as today. There's a film, I think it's The Hurricane. Good old Denzel Washington was in it. And he was a championship boxer or some kind of, top end boxer. And he was falsely accused of murder. It's a very, very powerful film. And he spends many years in prison before he's exonerated of the crimes that he was accused of. But there's a really powerful scene in the movie when he's first taken to prison. And he says, when they tell me to sleep, I'm going to be awake. When they tell me to be awake, I'm going to sleep. And he basically set out, even though he was physically confined, and physically the constraints on what we would define as freedom were placed on him, he was truly free because he applied his conscious choice to choose how he saw his circumstances, even though he had no direct control over the circumstances that were in front of him. So what I want to invite us all to consider is that freedom isn't something that somebody else takes or gives away, takes from us or gives to us. It's something that we accept through awareness of the fact that our reality is a reflection of what we choose it to be, regardless of what circumstances are apparent. Right now, a lot of people are locked down in their homes. My family in England didn't have that much of a Christmas. people are sneaking around and doing their best to skirt different tier numbers. I don't know. But ultimately, freedom comes in how we see these things and how we choose to show up in spite of these things. So that's what I want everybody to consider, that freedom isn't something that is given to us or taken away from us. It's something that we step into and choose, because ultimately it's something that must exist within us for a spirit that is outside of us.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm.
So, Daniel, in your experience, I know that you share a lot of your wisdom, and I think of it as a collective wisdom that also pours through each and every one of us, and then each of us gets to cultivate and bring that forth into full expression. So, what would you say are some things for individuals to really be focusing in on in terms of waking up that consciousness within themselves? How do you perceive that?
Well, I would say that what really comes down to, for me, everything comes down to my beyond intention model, ultimately. Whether I'm speaking about abundance, I'm speaking about health, relationships, or freedom, it comes down to beyond intention. And what beyond intention is ultimately a 4-step model that allows us to choose our outcomes. Now, the very first step of beyond intention is accept. I'm not going to go into the whole model today. I just want to talk about accept, because acceptance, I often find, is the pitfall that stands between us and what we want to step into. Acceptance gets blasted by shame, by guilt, by allowing other people to define things for us. So what I would love to see, if everyone took one thing away today, is to accept themselves wholly and completely as they are right now, and to make that complete acceptance the springboard from which they go to create other things. Start with just looking at who you are in the mirror, warts and all. And yeah, it may not be where you want to be, but it's where you are, and it's where you are now, and it's perfect. And if you can start from that space and start to bring more wholeness to yourself from yourself, rather than looking for something from outside of yourself, you're going to be so much better placed to go and create any single outcome that you want, whether it's freedom, whether it's love, whether it's abundance, whether it's health, because none of those things can be achieved so long as we're not accepting and loving who we are right now.
Right. You know, I like to think of the idea that freedom, you know, so let's take a moment for that. If all of you have heard the title Breaking Free, there's something that resonated with you. So there's images, there may be thoughts or feelings around those words and what it might mean to you. So take a moment to really just hold that space for yourself. And what does that mean to you? That's a very important piece as you start to feel into what that means. And I'd like to take you one step further to actually understand this part of your freedom, that while we focus on different aspects of ourselves, it's that full integration. And that fullness of that freedom is the power within yourself. So call it whatever you may, but that's what I believe the full freedom is, and what we're really trying to break through in this human experience. So we're having this, you know, here we are in this body, we come in, we're having this life, and then there's something coming through us, which is that life energy working through us. And as it works its way through us and out into the world, that's breaking free. And the more we access that, the more we allow it to come forth, that's the freedom that we're perceiving as the ultimate breaking free. Because then you have that direct access to your power, and it's yours. It can't be taken away. It is yours. Yeah. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Daniel?
I was going to say, you know, even right now, you and I were speaking just before about, you know, there's some very interesting things happening in the political landscape in the States right now. And, you know, I do my best to stay away from politics because I'm not a politician, right? Just like I stay away from giving medical advice because I've not been to medical school. But, you know, when it comes down to the butting of heads that erupts into violence, the butting of heads that erupts into hate and fear, you know, I'm a certified instructor in a modality called reality transurfing. And in RT, there's a golden rule that some of the guys here will recognize, because I actually mentioned this about an hour ago on our group coaching call. It's that you allow yourself to be yourself, whole and unashamedly and beautifully so. But then you give everyone else permission to do the same. You have your lessons to learn. You have your challenges. You have your experiences. and you allow other people to have the same. I heard a story recently about a woman whose daughter decided that she doesn't want to pursue a particular education route. And she was celebrating that she wasn't trying to impose her ideas about what her daughter should be doing, but she was able to see that it's not her journey, it's her daughter's journey. For me, my journey into fatherhood, which is very new, a big part of it for myself has been allowing, even at this young age, myself not to go down this path of trying to impose some direction or my own will or dictates on Ethan. Instead, just to create a loving space for him to have consciousness expanded, to be resourced and tool to make empowering choices, but his own choices, his own mistakes, his own pitfalls. All of this looping round to freedom is that a lot of the time, the energy that should be available for us to create our own reality gets tied up trying to dictate what's going on in other people's, judging what's happening in other people's, having stories to talk about what's happening in other people's. When all of those quanta, those moments, those instances, those nows, when our consciousness is tied up in someone else's story, it's not available for us to be consciously directing our own. And that's when we end up surrendering to our narratives. We end up surrendering to our unconscious programs. We end up surrendering to those scripts that we've been running on because we're not present enough to make the new choices, to create the new outcomes, because our consciousness is placed somewhere else. And consciousness can only be in one place at a time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the things I think that we had talked about was, well, then how does this actually roll out for individuals when it doesn't seem like it's working?
So I think the way how did I word it? When the magic
doesn't work.
It's really funny because I think after we did this, I put it on the list of like potential documentaries to make, because there is so much magic. And, people, I remember when The Secret first came out, Rhonda Byrne put out The Secret and everyone was, oh my gosh, law of attraction, it's great, I'm going to do this. And then it didn't work for so many people.
Yeah.
And then Joe Vitale came out with his book, The Key, I think it was The Key, where he spoke about different clearing tools, because he invited us to consider that, yeah, it's all very well and good what we're setting us up to be a vibrational match for, right? But if the path isn't clear for that thing to come to us, then, it's great. Yeah, it's great. Hi, blessing. Sorry that there's all these walls and jungles between us. And in my work, I talk about alignment a lot. And for me, alignment is being in a position where what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and how we're embodying our reality, how we're embodying what we're doing, all match up so that the path is clear. When the magic doesn't work, it's not that the magic isn't working. The magic is always working. It's just that the magic is working now to create what we're actually aligned with now. Because we're always experiencing what we're matching simultaneously in what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and what we're doing. The magic never stops. We're just not directing that magic to what we consciously desire. All it takes is to become unconscious for a moment, and that wonderful magic ends up creating something that we don't want. So when the magic's not working, let's take a step back, love and accept ourselves, clear the space for us to come into a conscious awareness of what we do want, and start to create that alignment to what we do want, choosing what we're feeling, choosing what we're thinking, choosing what we're doing, so that the magic can start being directed to what we want.
Yeah. So, for many of us, we've traveled down different spiritual paths, different types of work where we're working on the consciousness, all those kinds of things, and we have different names for it, So the thing is to understand that there doesn't matter what name you give it. When you're aligned, you're aligned. You can feel how it works through you. You can see the results of your focused intention and how it comes towards you, the things that you're vibrating out there and bringing back to you. And you can also see the work of your unconscious parts, because that's part of consciousness, to actually, oh, I created that, and go, okay. And that was something that for me personally used to really get me, because, something ugly pops out and I'd be like, oh my gosh, kind of thing. And the reality of that is that if you take life like it's a play, like it's a journey, and you're working through all these pieces and navigating through it, and you go easy on that journey, it's kind of like how I experienced when I would play with my students in my classroom when I was teaching. You know, kids are like really in the moment, you know, and you would just like whatever was popping up, it wasn't like really left to be a lot of judgment or whatever. It was just all within the play and context of how we move through the day together as one kind of breathing organism. And I imagine that that's really true in a really big universal way, like cosmically speaking, for all of us here on the earth right now, and all the ways that it's rolling out consciousness. So even those aspects that feel, you know, not pleasant. I was just doing a little live on this the other day, but there's meaning in that also, because all of it is serving to awaken us. All of it is serving to bring us through this time. And I think collectively we are in a time where as a human species, we are evolving. And so, you know, there can't be things under wrap, hidden down underneath. It's got to come out, you know, and the more we can, and we can embrace that, like what you were saying, Daniel, on that level where you're looking in the mirror and you're accepting yourself for all that it is. It's true of the big picture in the whole world, to be able to hold all of that in full embrace, because that's how we bring forth the changes that we ourselves are experiencing, and the metamorphosis that is happening for us individually and collectively. So I know that here you had also talked about stepping into the
choice machine.
Choice machine, yeah, that's what it was. I was like, yeah.
I just want to just touch quickly back on something that you said, because there's actually a gift for all of us here, and one that I think, you know, of all the things that are going to come from this, if you take this away, this is a game changer. When you look at something that you don't want that showed up, you still celebrate it as another opportunity to see that what you were thinking has become a part of your reality. And as counterintuitive as that sounds, the fact that you've created it and you're aware of the fact that you've created it means that when you bring more consciousness to your creative process, you've got more evidence of the fact that what you are thinking becomes what you create.
Yes.
So when you take that as more opportunity to bolster up the power to turn a thought into a thing, because the belief system is more deeply supported, as you then take that and mix it with deeper awareness in what you're thinking, mix that in with some loving compassion for yourself, loving compassion for others, all of a sudden you've got this beautiful storm of sexy, yummy, gorgeous, expansive creation that's just going to lead to more goodness going out, more consciousness, more expansion, more love, more wholeness, more beauty.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. What about the choice machine?
So the choice machine. So the choice machine was a concept that I spoke about in my book, Stepping Beyond Intention. And what it essentially invites us to look at is that every single outcome is a result of choice, whether conscious or unconscious. Every single outcome. When we go to the construction of reality and start looking at what's been demonstrated to be true, even with mainstream science, let alone mysticism and esoterics and all that good stuff, it's that the very fiber of our reality doesn't have its own opinion about the shape that it's going to take so much. And Ariana? As soon as I said Ariana, she's not gonna come on camera, she's gonna go and hide up there. But it doesn't have its own opinion. Not that it doesn't have intellect, it doesn't have its own opinion. Free will is a perfect and permanent part of the construction of reality. We always have complete freedom to choose what reality is going to take shape as around us. We just don't take the opportunity to do that consciously. And because we don't take the opportunity to do that consciously, we end up not exercising it. And because we don't exercise it, we end up running on our unconscious programs. And as a result, not creating what we want. But whether that choice machine is being activated consciously or unconsciously, it's still being activated. Energy sits waiting for instruction, but we are always creating. There is no point of our life that we're not creating an outcome. There's no point of our life when we're not consciously or unconsciously giving direction to energy. And that machine, that reality creating machine, is a permanent part of our world. And when we step into awareness of it and start lovingly directing it, then all of a sudden we can start seeing change.
Yes, I see that. I mean, certainly I see it in my life. I'm thinking that other people here are experiencing what that might mean also for you. And one of the things that I find is that, that idea that energy is sitting and waiting. So, it has led me over the course of my life to go, well, if it's sitting there waiting, what am I going to do with that, right? And it's like, right, we're living and we're having this experience. And so I think that that's where the idea of the application and the sustainability comes in, because it's through the practices. And there's not just one practice. It's not, oh, you got to meditate the certain way, or you got to follow this kind of path, or you got to, do yoga this way. And, I mean, any one of those things you can pick apart. You got to eat this way, and you can break it down and be like zillions of things within nutrition, or zillions of things within, breathing and meditation, or whatever, and so it's there. And we're at this beautiful time right now where there is so much available to us, readily available to us. I think when Daniel and I first met, I was telling him that I've witnessed like things over the course of my life. When my children were really little, like Ariana running around there in the background, the Whole Foods hadn't even come out yet. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that there's so much information available to us. We can pick and choose any which one and direct our intention, direct our focus, apply that. And not because Daniel's sitting here saying it, or because some other spiritual leader or big best-selling author, or richest world on the planet, whatever. Because it's not because anyone's saying it. It's for you to discover for yourself. That's the part that is the freedom that is leading us all at this time. And I believe there's a good portion of that that is just innately, it's in us to express. And so we're discovering it in lots of different ways, and we're here to support that. I know that everybody that is in this consciousness work knows that this is a beautiful time, in a way that is really accessible and available to a lot of people, be it through technology or whatever other means we have, but it's available to us. And so now it just becomes a matter of that free will. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that energy that's sitting around waiting for what?
Waiting for what?
Yeah.
And what's beautiful is that if we want to go down the rabbit hole with the choice machine, my belief, and it's my belief, and people can accept or reject this, it's not me imposing it on anyone, it's just my belief, right? It's that playing with the choice machine is what we're here to do, to see what happens. There's an infinite number of combinations of experiences that can happen on a choice machine. Like the film Sliding Doors show that, you one choice, one moment, one missed train creates a completely new timeline ready to be experienced. And we're bouncing between all of these different timelines consciously because none of them are fixed. And that's the adventure. At the end of the day, when I get into disagreements with people about, soul contracts and blah, 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 and the soul, this and that, and I'm like, well, at the end of the day, we're here to have an experience and report back. That means that we don't know everything. So let's come at this with the innocence and naivety of a child that doesn't know anything, and just have fun, being present, seeing what happens, trying it on, knowing that we can't get it wrong anyway, because every single variation of this moment has been experienced by another expression of us in another expression of consciousness, because all things are happening here and now. So we can't miss out, we can't lose, we can't miss the opportunity. We can just have the conscious experience that we're having now. So just have the most full, fun and expansive variation of that journey, not getting caught up in should-haves, would-haves and could-haves. I have to eat this, I have to breathe that way. Because at the end of the day, for any one of those things to be the only way, we've just constricted infinite possibility. And the only thing God cannot do is be less than itself, because then it's no longer God. So infinite possibility cannot be constricted and still be infinite possibility. So the second that we say it must be that or it must be that, then we've just collapsed infinite possibility and given us this constricted sandbox to play in when we're offered infinity to play in.
It reminds me a book that I had wrote a couple years ago called Girl Seeking Pearls, and I wrote it in a third person, and it was told as a tale, because if you read it, it would kind of sound like kind of like a fairy tale in a way. And it's really a good portion of it, all of it is really autobiographical, but it's told in third person because they were all different parts and aspects of myself through different cycles of my life. And at some point I became aware that my soul was wanting to experience different things, and it would reach in different ways. And at one point I had done a birth chart, and not because I'm really into astrology or horoscopes, although I do think that they, like any art, it offers different information for us, and happened to have a friend, the gentleman that I had sent your way with the birth chart for Ethan.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I had ever done something really in depth with someone, but he told me things that I hadn't, I had heard like in my own head, but I hadn't even verbalized myself. And they were really deep, like things from like when I was a child and then later on as a young woman, things like that. And he had told me, the way my house and my stars and all those things were aligned, that the way part of my thinking was. And he said, you're definitely not someone who thinks like in the box, like you're way out there on that realm, on that stratosphere. And he said, in this lifetime, you're going to be very attracted to different things. And what you're an expert at, you're already an expert at. But this lifetime is about whatever feels like isn't what you know, or something that kind of isn't what you would normally go towards. He says, go towards that. That's what your soul is really wanting to experience. And it's funny that he had said that, because that was the way my life was unfolding, And so, I mean, some of you probably can relate to that, it's like, out of 7 in the family, there was a lot of differences about the way I did it, or that kind of thing, and yet there was still parts of me that would wonder, like, I wonder what that kind of life is, and always kind of thinking in these different ways, because it is true that it is an adventure. And there's something that really sat really deeply with me, like, this is an adventure. And sharing that now with my adult children as they're on their adventure is really cool. And how we all kind of commingled and created an adventure in this unit as well. And and truly, like, the landscape, which was just full of, like, hills and jagged rocks and low valleys and seas, that just like floated forever, and so it's just a really beautiful thing to approach life in this way, where we really understand the magnificence of our power to create and to embrace the fullness of it all. So yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm seeing here some of the different chat box here. Love that movie, loving the whole conversation. We'd love to hear if you have questions about this, if you'd like to talk to Daniel specifically about some of the things that he's been working on. I don't know if they're following you or how that is. I know there's a lot of different people here on the side that haven't mentioned anything, but really just wanting, yeah.
I'm just going to change rooms.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to change room, because I'm going to change room. Just one sec.
Yeah, that's fine. So going into just a little bit of what Daniel was talking about, that it's really diverse. And that's really part of the idea of soul expansion, or even consciousness expansion, because it's really about being able to embrace the diversity of all the different things that are going on around us. So you can choose any one thing that might be coming into your attention. Maybe it's something physical, health, or emotional and relationships, or something that's more mental in terms of thoughts or incessant thoughts, whatever it is. These kinds of different opportunities provide a further and deeper integration into the fullness of who we are and how we're expanding. So I'm curious to find out what it is that drew you to the idea of breaking free, and what things you're working on yourselves. So if you'd want to put that into the chat box, that'd be great. And Daniel, maybe you'd like to share a little bit about these ideas. Did you always have them? Did they suddenly pop up for you? How did that come to be for you?
Wow. So it's really funny, because the clarity that I have around my journey and the different turning points on it has come because I'm going to be doing a TEDx talk Long Island in September, and I've been working with a coach to, really refine and make sure that the message is properly delivered and executed. And Trisha's really taken me through the ringer, because you've only got 15 minutes, and I've got all of these things I want to talk about, 20 years of experience, and I want to get everything out, and I've got all this stuff. It's like, you've got 15 minutes, mate. You've got 15 minutes, and you have to have a central theme. And I didn't realize I had a central theme until I went through this process, and I realized that I really, really do. And that's that everybody has something beautiful to contribute, but the beauty that we have to contribute is being limited by the stories that we're telling ourselves about who we are and what we are, and that there's a fullness of this human experience that's available for us to tap into and to share with others. But we get so lost, like I said, in other people's narratives, us imprinting on them and them allowing them to imprint on us. And it was a long journey, right? It wasn't like a 5-minute journey for me. It's been a rocky old road, right? And sometimes the pebbles of the past try and come and hit you on the head. But ultimately, it was that, just what I was saying earlier, looking at all of it and saying, oh, how cool. I'd rather it was something else, but I did create that one. Hey ho, let's go. What are we going to do with it instead? And it's been a series of those adventures for the best part of 20 years. I came through positive thinking and through visualization, ended up into mysticism and the esoterics, looped right around and came through the heart space and more deep spiritual practice, then into like the kind of quasi science overlay, and then to the quantum mechanics stuff. And now just realizing that it's not really that complicated. And this is, one of the things that with my work, people often refer to as being something that attracts them to it. It's that, there's a lot of stuff, but it's not really a lot of stuff. It's really simple. What we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're doing is going to be what we experience. And there's 1,001 different stories as to where we came from, why we're here, this and all of that stuff. And the really cool thing is every one of them is right. Every one of them is right.
Right.
They do the stuff about diet, and I've started to get a little bit obsessed with YouTube recently. And there's this guy called Will Tennyson, this Canadian guy. He's about 20 years old, hilarious kid. And he does like a diet for like a day or a diet for a week, and he goes through these different diets, and like every single one of those diets, somebody out there is having perfect results with it. I've just had an affinity, I suppose, to like more of a low carb diet, not because of any fad. It's just what I feel more comfortable doing. And then I took on a fitness coach last year, and they're like, oh, don't do that. Don't follow that keto stuff. Oh, don't do that. No, you need to eat carbs. And I put on 20 pounds. I thought, crap. And it was like, then when I had my DNA tested, and I'm actually perfectly adapted to a ketogenic diet. My body actually processes fats more than it does carbs. But someone else, it's not going to work. And you know what? It's because everything works, just not for you. I said, I put a meme or something up once. It's like, every key opens a door. It just might not be your door. Not every key and every door goes together. And so for me, it's been a journey of finding my keys and my doors. It's been accepting other people's keys and other people's doors, not trying to force my ideas on how reality works on people, but supporting them in finding their own dance with God. That's what it's really been about. I'm just keeping it really simple. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I doing? And what lens am I seeing that through? Am I seeing it through a lens that's aligned with me? And am I supporting people in finding the lens that works for them? And that's it.
Yeah. I do believe that it's that simplicity. I think it reminds me of a fairy tale where the young man sets out on a journey to find his treasure, and he ventures and goes out and does all this loop around and, has all these perils and all these other things. And eventually he ends up coming right back home. But the symbology of that is just, it was like in his backyard. The treasure was in his backyard, Yeah.
And so The Alchemist.
Yeah. Well, no, not The Alchemist. That's a similar story. No, this is actually like a Grimm's fairy tale,
wow.
From really ancient. And, fairy tales is something that I had studied it a period of time because I was a Waldorf teacher for many years, and I worked with a lot of the young children in the elementary grades. And so a lot of the curriculum was based around fairy tales, because it's this these stories that come, we don't even really have a date stamp on them, like when they came into being. And these fairy tales are told in all different regions of the world, all over, because there's these symbols and journeys of the soul. And really, it's just about consciousness expansion, you know, going through this adventure that we're talking about. And then they express out in all these characters and everything, but different cultures have the very same stories that have traveled, you know, word of mouth before it was even written for forever, you know. So they're kind of like in the ethers, like something that's out there, you know, like residual, just hanging about for all of us. But I think about this idea of simplicity, and part of that breaking free is being able to tap into that power where you believe that you are the authority on your experience. Up till then, you are, you know, gathering and, you know, turning to this one and going like, maybe they know, or maybe this one, or maybe that'll tell me, or, you know, they know better, or whatever that is. And at some point you draw that line and you're like, wait, this is all good. Like you said, Daniel, it's like, it's all out there, it's all working, but what is working for me? And I am the only one who gets to answer that. That's it.
And that's freedom.
That's right.
That's freedom. That is. Choosing of the infinite one possibilities, and even those that are coming up around us, which one am I selecting for me? Freedom is not allowing other people's narratives to be the narrative that I run on. Freedom is having the freedom to allow someone else's narrative to be the narrative that I run on. Sometimes we want to be lazy and run on someone else's narrative, but that's conscious folly. I'm stepping into this consciously versus something that's unconsciously stepping on top of me.
Yeah, yeah. I saw here that someone said the title resonated because their journey was about breaking free from cultural, societal, family, religious expectations, and how I'm supposed to live my life. And that's true for, I think, every one of us experiences that in some way, somehow, sometime, you know, through the journey. Daniel, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think it's beautiful. And I just want to applaud anyone who hears this live, recorded, replayed, regurgitated. If everyone shares one thing from this, it's give people permission to pat themselves on the back for taking that leap. I think it's so easy for those of us that even to be having this conversation, if everyone just take a moment to just look at the journey that brought them to this conversation, the ideals that were placed upon them, thrust upon them, that they had to break free from, the overcoming of themselves that they had to make to be here. And if we just started to celebrate that, even like at a 10%ness, that would give us so much yummy juiciness. We'd be filling up our batteries. But I think, especially when we're on this kind of path, I just find that sometimes, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes, we don't honor the leap forwards that we've made. We don't honor the massive steps because we see the infinity that's beyond us. We see how much, you know, we feel this pull to do so much more. But there are some people that don't even make a single step, let alone 10, 20. There's some people that don't even think about making a step. They're very happy just being in the muck of unconsciousness. Even just being aware enough to know that I'm unconscious, that's something to be celebrated. Wherever you are, as long as it's a step further away from being unconsciously stepped on and consciously stepping into something, even if it's just getting ready to think about being ready about making the step, that's something to be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's that. I see that also as wonder. You know, that's where I see that we're all connected. That's I see that just life itself. This is, we're all here. We're all here right now. We're having this conversation right now. And how lovely it is to place energy and celebrate this over all the other kinds of things, all the other stories that are out there too. They exist, you know, but this right here that we're talking about is, I believe, that richness that runs deeply within ourselves, that allows us to fully embrace and step into the idea of creating, not the idea, but to create, that allows us to create our experience, our freedom, and more all the time. And that allowance is so important. I feel like, you know, when we're looking around at so many of the different situations that are going on right now, that keeps, like, on a megaphone, allow and accept. You know, it's like if we don't want to, it's still like allow and accept. You know, I mean, you know what? How else? You know,
Exactly.
and it just also opens up the room for peace.
Yeah.
So much peace.
Because I think about a lot of the peace that we're not enjoying, it's the peace that we're not allowing ourselves to enjoy because
Right.
we're so busy having our consciousness tied up in all of this other stuff. Whereas we were just like, be here now.
Yeah.
Because there's no stories in the now, there's no stress in the now, there's no aggravation in the now, there's no drama in the now, there's just now. And even if we just sit now, just for now, then we can have that freedom from all the stuff for now. And that can allow us to have something that we can then go and carry into other nows too. Even if it's just this hum underneath of the possibility of peace. When we're going out into the battlefields of the workplace or education or Washington, D.C., whatever it is, right? There could be the undercurrent of peace that gives us an anchor that doesn't allow us to flow off. Maybe we lose our stuff for a minute, but we'll always be able to find a way back home because we've got that underlying anchor just sitting there of peace being available to us.
And I believe that that's a part of it too. The more that we're practicing in this way, and what I mean by practicing is just allowing. That's the practice. The more that we're into this way of being, then we have that easy return when we find ourselves go out of it. It's easier to get back. And at some point, I believe that the experience for me was as if though like a scale, it shifted somehow, and all of a sudden this other thing that, you know, would draw me out all of a sudden became much less desirable than this thing that drew me in, that felt
leverage, expansive leverage.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful freedom. It was freedom, you know. And so for all of us, I mean, everybody wants freedom in some way, somehow, and to have that freedom here in our minds, connected to our hearts, and be living. Part of these little lives that I'm doing on Meaningful Moments 365 days is just about these really simple things. I mean, today was about a sunbeam, and it's different experiences for all of us, but we discount the simplicity of just being in the moment, accepting what's in the moment, and really drawing this deep, rich yumminess, I think is how you said it, Daniel. It is, because I think I described it as delicious, you know.
Yeah, you did.
You know. So I see some other things here. So like Andrea's comment, living our lives. Yes. Thanks for commenting, guys. So are there any questions right now? Anything that anybody is dying to ask? Yes. T, allow and accept. I did say that. Daniel was talking about that. We're talking about that. That's the idea of being present moment. And I'm so happy. I don't know how many of you out there have small children or adult children, but what's really a beautiful thing to witness right now is our older children with their children, and the moments that we get to share with not only our grandchildren, but with our children as parents now, and from how they're perceiving as they're perhaps, you know, busy at work, sometimes different things, and they have a family and they're trying to take care of the child and different things going on. And just to be able to anchor that feeling of presence right now and creating that loving space for their child, and the benefit not only for the child but for them, because it's a gift to be in that moment with them. I would say that that was one of the most beautiful things that I enjoyed about my time teaching for 20 years. And that was where I first encountered really that fullness of presence, and that I allowed myself to stay in that realm for a long time, because that was really where it felt yummy to me. My soul got to play. I got to really enjoy that, and whatever we were doing at that time. And that's why those years were really magical. And it's beautiful to talk to my students now who are in college from back then, and to hear some of the things that they remember from those times. And it's just such a gift. It really is, how things have this full circle, and how we get to be present, not only for ourselves, but then for one another as well. And just so much more of that. Can you just imagine how expansive that is for us?
And it keeps rolling on, because
Yeah.
that expansiveness and the yumminess that we pass on to those around us, that if we just take that yumminess one level deep and we all just keep passing that yumminess on, it's a positive virus of yummy expansiveness, and that can change the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's calling a lot, out of us right now. And I see from Andrea here, almost every day at some point in the day, I get filled with gratitude over freedom. Yes, of how I live my day. Whereas when I was working 9 to 5, it was like the movie Groundhog's Day, and I was hating life. Yeah.
It's so funny. I've only ever had, I think I've worked, like working for someone. I worked in a cinema, movie theater when I was like 15 or 16. And I actually was making computers and selling computers at the time. So I didn't need the money, but I really liked just working at the movies and serving popcorn. And I worked at a Ben and Jerry stand. But I've actually had a job when I actually needed it. It's when I was just sort of putting my life back together. And I got a job at a call center. And I was doing like the same customer service call. Like, you get into trouble for veering off script. This 8-minute call.
I worked at that place too. No,
over and over and over again from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 8:30 at night, with 2 15-minute breaks in a 45-minute lunch hour. Groundhog. Fortunately, I think maybe 6 months of my life was spent doing that. But I salute anybody that can go to a job every day. You guys are the real champs. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But
it's so interesting, because when I first married my husband, and this was after a first long-term marriage and 30 years and raising my family and all those kinds of things, and then the divorce happened, and then it was a couple years and I met my second husband. And it was really interesting, because when I moved from the area that I was at, there wasn't another Waldorf school nearby where I was teaching. So I went into what I always think of as the real world. And I went to work at some places where I've totally understood, like, I've been in some kind of bubble. We had like circle keepers in our faculty that kept for kind of gauging just like where everybody was at in the course of the meeting, visionary board kind of ideas as we worked around the circle. We had these, phenomenal days of just beautiful stories and rich curriculum and being with the children. And everybody pretty much, you have your difficult moments and things like that, but everybody pretty much was, it was just, we were blessed, in not only in one school, in 2 different schools, and in the communities that I worked in. And all of a sudden I was in this other world. And I was like, oh, but there was something that I internally had wanted to experience about what this other world was. Because there was some part of me thinking that I wasn't living in a real world, that I was in, that this was the real world, only to come to find, like, wait a minute, And it's really interesting to see, but it's similar to that experience you described, Daniel. It's like very similar, and thinking like, how do people do this? It was just like, whoa, But the truth is, there's just multiple realities all the time, even our own. So that's where the quantum stuff starts to fly in there, right? Anyway, but happy that people here seem to be more aligned with their lives and what their journey is. Daniel, I know that you have so much so many offerings out there. And so maybe you can just share a little bit with some of the things that you got going on right now. I know you mentioned you're getting ready for TED Talks, and you have some books out there, and just a little bit of other things you're doing.
I mean, everything that's going on with me is always going to be on my website, dreamwithdan.com. Ultimately, whatever people want to create is going to come down to them finding something that's aligned with how they look at reality. And I would invite people perhaps to look, I've got a resource called an intention setting cheat sheet. Streamwithdan.com/intention, or you can go to my website, it's on the free resources section. And what that does is it helps you to start developing more of a conscious relationship to what you're creating. It doesn't restrict you to doing any kind of practice or doing things a certain way. It just gives a loose framework that you can use to step into and start creating more deliberately. And I'd invite people to maybe try that out with something simple first. Not, I'm going to get a new job, or I'm going to move to Timbuktu, or I'm going to manifest love of my life. Small things. And just build on that and start to flex that muscle of conscious creation. And as you start developing that muscle and flexing that muscle of conscious creation, what's going to happen is you're going to start going deeper down the rabbit hole and getting more flex with it. Shaunae's here. Shaunae's actually my mastermind, and she does my VIP days that I do every month. And we go really deep down the rabbit hole with that. But one of the things I always say to them, and Shaunae will attest to this, start creating something that you know is going to happen. Because then what happens is you call something into being, it shows up. And it's a way of almost hacking reality. If you set an intention or you move towards something that you know is going to happen, then when it happens, you've closed the loop. And then as you close that loop with something that's more definite, you can start to push the boat out and things that are pretty certain, and just keep dropping the certainty on it. And you keep dropping the certainty on it and keep following that conscious process, you'll get to the point where you start calling in something that seems a lot further out, and it will start showing up. And it's magic how it happens.
Yeah. I like the idea that, yes, it is true. Magic exists, and it's around us all the time.
Exactly.
All the time. Dan, somebody asked here that you could type in that website information in the box.
Yeah,
so to do that for them. And also you can find Dan, a few different links of what he's connected to his work on our community page at PureEsperanza.org as well. And we're just excited because we know that everybody right now sitting on the board are creators and understand their power to create in a lot of different ways. And so we're excited that the team has come together to build on that and to be bringing just a diverse, like I think of it like a buffet of all different ways that people can tap in and align to their adventure and to their journey. And I think of that as well-being, and that is also the art of living, which is what we're here doing. It's this art, this big masterpiece we get to be part of. So I needed was a maybe that I could. Good. I'm so happy, Shaunae. Thank you. Yeah, that snowballing effect is exactly how it happens. It's just snowballing. I think of it as little links connecting, you know, more and more and more and more all the time. And then just like we're all here, and it connects out to others as well, and it just keeps growing. So that's beautiful. So I thank you all for being here today. And I don't know if there's anything else that you want to offer, Dan, or say here.
No, just thank you for coming, and carry with you one thing from today. Obviously, there's been various nuggets, as Shaunae calls them, golden nuggets. And today, take one thing and do something with it. Yeah. That's it. Don't let this be another evening that you spent kicking it with some cool cats. Let it be an evening that you took on something that you actually went to integrate. And it just needs to be one thing. The thing that resonates with you the most, the thing that's easiest for you to integrate, take it, run with it, and share it with somebody.
And there's nothing to lose.
Exactly.
Nothing to lose.
You can't miss the boat.
Yeah.
Hey,
So,
Dan, I'm sorry. I do have a quick question for Daniel.
Yes, of course.
Oh, hey.
Daniel, where can I buy your T-shirt from?
Oh, this is one of my T-shirts. If you go to dreamerhq.com, you'll go to my store, and we've got all sorts of groovy T-shirts on there, some really cool ones. But I tell you what, for showing up live, if you email daniel@dreamwithdan.com with an address and a size, and I'll get Amy to ship you one out.
Okay, Daniel, I did not understand what you said. Can you put that in the chat box?
Yeah,
What is
so
your
email me.
address? Okay.
Thank you, Andrea.
So just email your size and address, and I'll get Amy to ship you out one. You want one of this one? This moment is perfect. Is that the T-shirt that you want?
Yes, that is awesome. I could just wear that all day. I could wear it to bed when I wake up.
Right on.
Yeah, just shoot an address and a size, and I'll get Amy to ship you one out.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
All right. Well, that concludes our time together, and I'm sure you'll be getting some emails and some people that are just right on there, because this is the perfect moment. And thank you all for being here in this perfect moment together. Thank you all. And again, if you hadn't heard, PureEsperanza is a nonprofit organization. So please go on over to pureesperanza.org, see what kinds of experiences you can receive there and what resonates with you, and keep just getting into all that yumminess that you're finding in your adventure and your journey. And we support and honor that for you. Thank you all. Blessings. We'll catch you all around the corner there on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those things.
All that good stuff.
LinkedIn, yeah. Blessings. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.